So the brands, Matugga, like I mentioned, all cask-aged rums. So we'll start with our golden rum. This is bottled at 42%. This is pretty much our flagship product, and how it's made, I'll talk about this very briefly. We'll cover it when we're doing the walk around. We distill everything from scratch here. So what we'll do is we'll get the distillate, which is a clear liquid, pretty much your white rum is the distillate with water. And we will put that in a bourbon cask for anywhere between 6 to 9 months. And then when that is done, we will blend and sort of try to get the flavors consistent across batches. Very difficult to do when you don't have a huge amount of casks, but we somewhat manage it here. And then that is reduced to bottling strength and packaged up for your enjoyment. So no caramel color added. The color is completely natural, wood extracted color. Sugar is a big issue in the rum world, so I know I'm just going to have to say this. This contains 2 grams per liter of added sugar, just to balance out the tannins. I don't think that's excessive. So it's still on the dry side, which is what I like to drink, is a drier kind of drink, whether it's whiskey or whatever, the sweet side, I sort of can't really drink too much of that. But yeah, so still quite dry. Our spiced rum is essentially the same as our golden rum, but it is infused with spices, hence spice rum. So we use real spices: cinnamon, ginger, cardamom, cloves, vanilla, and tea. So the distillate is steeped for somewhere between 4 and 5 hours, can be a bit longer, depending on the temperature in the distillery. Once it's extracted enough of the spices, we will then put that in cask to rest and develop some woody notes as well, and add some complexity with oxygenation, basically. So that's our spiced rum, and it's really ideal on its own, I think, on ice. I like to have it on its own without ice, but you can have it with ice. Just cools it down, takes the alcohol burn slightly back, so you start to get the flavors before the burn. And so that's our Matugga range for now. We do have limited editions. We did a limited edition 2018, which was, this is our Mavuno range. Mavuno stands for harvest in Swahili, the language of the country I was born, Uganda. Is now, but it's generally the language of the region: Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. So we did 2018, which was acacia cask aged, and that's completely sold out now. We don't have any. I've probably got 1 bottle in the distillery somewhere, but that was really a successful project, and we decided we're going to extend it and do unique cask finishes, or aging. Actually, finish is not the right thing. We completely age it in something new. So you just have to wait for the next one, 2019. Really excited about that one. Right, so let's taste the golden rum. Bear with me 1 second. I got some here. Okay, golden rum, golden color, I think you'll agree. All natural color. It is non-chill filtered. It's full of flavor. It's a pot distilled rum. We'll talk about this when I do the tour. You'll see the pot stills. And so the flavor is intense. It is super duper intense. There's a lot of smokiness, a lot of fruity notes as well coming through. Got some tobacco notes as well coming from the wood. So it's really a liquid that's designed for aging. And we hope to be able to age these even longer. They really work well with wood. They complement it. The wood does not dominate the liquid. The liquid and the wood are equally powerful, basically. So this is how I like to taste. You can taste any way you like. I just like to nose it first. Take a breath out. Take another nose. Take a breath out. Then take a good sip. They say you should have a little bit. I tend to just drink a lot of it, so I get a full whack of the flavor. Okay, so Again, you're getting all those fruity notes, the smokiness. It just goes across all our products because it's based on the style of distillation that we like to use. And that smokiness really complements the woody notes, the toffee, the coffee, notes that you're getting, sort of tobacco-y notes as well that you're getting. So really, really, really complements it. I can't wait for us to age these a bit longer so that you can taste how well this distillate merges with good wood. So I don't know what you think, but I like to drink that one neat. But on ice is possibly the best way to really get a good feel of the flavors. Okay. So everything happens in the same space. So it's all one space. So all from fermentation to maturation, all happens in the same space. So I like to think there's a bit of synergy there with everything sort of coming together. It helps us a lot with the aging process as well. The temperatures in here are quite hot, during the summer especially, and also during the winter it can be quite warm. 20 to 25 degrees in the winter when all the stills are running. It's pretty hot in here. That aids our maturation, the extraction part of our maturation. So again, this is why we get a lot of tannins in the golden rum. There's a huge amount of wood extraction happening in a very short space of time. Hasn't quite had enough time to bring those tannins in and embed them, but still gives a good structure, gives the drink good structure, I think. Right, production. So rum is made from sugarcane byproducts. So you can either use sugarcane molasses, you can use syrup, cane juice syrup, or you can use cane juice itself. Now, the first two, kind of difficult to obtain here. Cane juice goes off really fast. So the thing that lasts long that we can ship from the warmer climates is molasses. And we use molasses from Africa, where I'm from. And what we'll do is we'll ferment those molasses. We'll add them to a tank. So this is one of the tanks here, one of our fermentation tanks. There's currently fermentation happening in here. And basically we'll add a lot of hot water into this tank with the molasses. We'll wait for that water to cool down. Then we'll pitch our yeast into that so we don't burn and kill the yeast. We'll wait for it to cool down to about 20 to 30 degrees. Cool it down and fermentation starts. The yeast start to consume the sugars. They create alcohol and other flavor compounds, esters, etc., all the things that we love. So after seven to 10 days, we have our sugarcane wine, I like to call it. And that sugarcane wine is quite bitter. It's the sugars are all, the sort of what we call the simple sugars like glucose are all gone. There are some complex sugars still in there, which the yeast cannot consume. But it's quite bitter, but it is quite flavorsome, quite fruity, and very, very treacle smelling and treacle tasting. So once we're done with that, we go into distillation. So this is one of our stills. This is our one of our wash stills. So we have two wash stills, 200-liter stills, copper pot stills, two wash and two spirit. So if you've been to a whiskey distillery, you'll be familiar with what I'm talking about. So there's a gas burner under here, which will fire up the wine, and vapors will evaporate through the line arm or the swan neck down into the condenser where they'll cool down, and we'll collect at this point here our low wines. So this is really about separating. This is about creating the first spirit, which is called low wines. So it's about 20% alcohol by volume. Still not quite rummy enough for me. I needed a bit higher than that. So we need to refine it a bit more. So this is still the first wash still, second wash still. And then we'll take, and so here we've got the third still, which is our intermediate still. So this is where the low wines will go. And we will again distill those. So we're trying to rectify it to around about 40%. So we will collect high wines at about 40%. So now at this point, it's starting to smell and taste really rummy. We've concentrated the flavors. We've concentrated the volatiles. So you're now really smelling the rummy bits. So once we've done the intermediate distillation, we will come to the final distillation. Now this is the precision cut. This needs to be done 100% correct. So we will do what's known as a heads cut and a tails cut. So For the first 2 distillations, it is strictly a tails cut. What that means is we decide when to stop collecting at the end, and that's a tail cut basically. At this point, we do both a heads cut, i.e. at the front end. There's some liquid. The first liquid to come out is called the foreshots. We will separate those foreshots. They contain things that we don't want in our spirit, primarily methanol, but also some aldehydes, which are quite intense and aggressive. So we want to separate those out to get smooth but intense distillate. So once we've collected our distillate, the distillate goes one or two ways, or quite a few ways actually, but let's talk about the brand. So Matugga, the distillate will go straight into cask for the golden rum. And this is our cask aging area here. So these are primarily bourbon casks or bourbon casks behind me. And so we will fill these with spirit and leave them in there for 6 to 9 months. Let them gain color, gain more complexity, gain vanilla notes, gain sort of all those tobacco-y and tannic notes. But the smokiness, now I spoke about the direct fire. The direct fire at the first distillation is what's primarily responsible for the smokiness. But also, molasses are burnt sugars, so there are some smoky notes in there anyway to start with. So it's sort of like a build-up from the raw material, fermentation, the distillation, and ultimately for the golden rum and the spiced rum, there's additional smokiness coming from the charred inside of the cask. So it's a build-up. So Peter, okay, great. Maillard reactions. So Maillard reactions, you can Google this, you can search it. It's basically the reactions that are responsible for turning your bread brown or your steak. When they say you need to brown your steak or your meat when you're making a stew or something like that, the browning is largely Maillard reaction. So it's basically proteins and carbohydrates and a lot of heat and water, and then it will create those kind of interesting flavors. There's all sorts of flavor chemicals that are created as part of that are quite yummy and make things taste good. So the Maillard reactions happen at the first distillation because we have a lot of organic matter in the wash or the wine, and so we've got proteins in there, and we've got carbohydrates. Like I said, there's some really complex sugars, more or less carbohydrates that cannot be consumed by the yeast, so they're still in there. And the direct fire creates a huge amount of heat at the interface between the liquid and the actual copper pot. And at that point is where the Maillard reactions happen. A degree of caramelization can happen at some point towards the end as the temperature of the wash goes up to about 80 or 90 degrees. At the interface, you're getting much higher temperatures, well over 100, I'd imagine, and you're getting a degree of caramelization as well, which adds some flavor, some caramel flavor to our distillate. So these are the cooking effects we talk about when we talk about Maillard reactions. So very easy to achieve with direct heat, very difficult to achieve with indirect heating of your still. In fact, pretty much impossible, which is why gin producers tend to not direct fire their stills, because you potentially burn the botanicals. So and develop those flavors that they don't want. So that's our Matugga range. So as well, our spiced rum will go into tank behind me there, a steel tank behind there. So that's a multifunctional tank. So that's both our blending tank and our sort of infusion tank. So that's where our distillate will go. We'll add the spices, whole spices, and let them macerate for, like I said, about 4 hours, 4 to 10 hours maybe. Can be longer, can be a couple of days, depending on the temperature. Once we've extracted what we need, that will then go into a cask. This one in particular, actually, this one here is our spiced rum cask. So, and then once that has been in there for about 3 weeks, the flavors have married up. It's gained some additional complexity from the wood extraction and a bit of micro-oxygenation. Then that's ready to go back in the tank. It's in the cask at 50%. We put it in the tank, reduce it to 42%. And then that is filtered and sent through for your enjoyment. So this is the Navy Strength. So this is literally just distillate and water. There's nothing, we don't do anything more complex than that. The flavors are already complex enough. If you've tasted it already, you will have noticed that there's so much flavor packed into it. It doesn't really need any resting or any maturation in cask to get additional flavors into it. The distillate is naturally flavorsome because, as I've described, because of the style of distillation that we're doing. The direct heating creates additional flavors that make it quite yummy. So it's quite a robust rum. I like to pair these rums with robust food. So I'm a firm believer in eating and drinking at the same time. It's very good for your health. Cheers, everyone, by the way. Right, so I like to pair this with really strong flavored food. So if you've tasted it already, you'll taste it's very smoky. It's got banana notes as well coming through. It's got what I call those biscuity notes, which are a result of these Maillard reactions, which make it quite yummy. So there's a lot of flavor going on. You want to pair it with something that it won't dominate. So I like to pair it with strong foods. So strong flavored foods. My favorite is Scottish smoked salmon and melon, and very simple. Here's one I did earlier. So this is simple layers of smoked salmon and melon, and it's just perfect because you got the saltiness and sort of robust flavors of the salmon, the smoked salmon. Also, okay, the smokiness does pair as well with the distillate. It's quite an interesting flavor bridge going on between them. And then you've got the melon, which is quite refreshing, but also the rum's got its sweetness and it's got its smokiness. It's basically a flavor bomb in your mouth. So if you have access to that, there's simple layering. It doesn't have to be Michelin star stuff. It just needs to taste good. So have a go at that and let me know what you think. This is how I love to enjoy that. I will have it neat with that. And just the other thing you could discover is that when you have food with, I mean, most people are quite afraid of high strength rums. I have to admit, I was, when I first tasted Rare Nephew. People are quite afraid of them, and they are quite intense and aggressive, but it helps to have something to eat. It really does. You'll be surprised how much high-strength rum you can get through if you're eating while you're drinking. It's something we learned in Martinique, where they make rum from cane juice. It's called agricole rum. And they generally will have it in a drink called a tea punch. So it's basically high strength rum, 55% plus, somewhere in the 60s. And you'll have 3 shots of that, squeeze of lime juice, drop the lime in, brown sugar. I prefer brown sugar. Some people use sugar syrup, whichever way. Give it a good swizzle. If you have a swizzle stick, just swizzle it all together. And it's super delicious. First sip is going to be a bit like, okay, that was intense. Second one's going to be like, oh, really, really like that. And then when you pair it with food, it just elevates the whole drinking experience and makes it, makes it good. So yeah, so we like to make an occasion of our drinking experiences. It's not just, throwing a few shots back and then and going to bed. Have some friends over, have some food, drink something, and have a good experience. So that's Live Navy Strength. That's how I like to enjoy it. We designed it really for bars, but I think that you can get used to it. It's actually really, really sippable. Right. So then we've got Liv's Navy Strength Baby Brother, pot distilled. So again, it is just distillate and water. This one we've reduced to 42.5. So again, if you do manage to get this at some point, you'll notice that the flavors change significantly with diluting. It's incredible actually how much the spirit changes just through adding additional demineralized water. Completely changes things. You start to really dive deep into what I call the top notes, the high notes, the floral notes, the fruity notes, the apple, all of these really top flavorsome notes. So that one, again, I'll drink it exactly the same way I do the Navy Strength. I'll drink it neat, but I think it does a fantastic rum and cola, really fantastic rum and cola. I would also have it with apple juice. That's a particular favorite of our house is rum and apple juice. Both of them, this and the Matugga Gold, work really, really well with apple juice. Cloudy apple juice and a slice of lime, and it's on ice is beautiful for the summer. So that's the baby brother. Then the range expands. We've got some liqueurs. No, before we get to the liqueurs, we've got a black spiced rum, which is that one there. So again, this one, a particular favorite in our household. This is probably the sweetest rum we do. And it is essentially, all the live range is unaged. So the color comes from particularly high grade of molasses, pretty much treacle, really, really sweet molasses, which we add to the spirit. We then add an array of spices and some heather flower and let that kind of macerate and become more complex over time. And then we'll reduce it to bottling strength. And that's it. So it's a take on classic black rum, which is basically colored with, hundreds of years ago was colored with molasses. That practice has changed now. You use color caramel, but I like the idea of you've created a spirit from molasses and then you add molasses back into it. There's an almost cyclical synergy kind of thing going on there. I quite like that idea. So it's really a 100% sugarcane drink. This is beautiful on its own. I wouldn't put anything in it, but it does make a really mean rum and coke, because on its own, it does taste like rum and coke, which is why I say I don't put anything in it. It does taste like a rum and coke, but it is 40% alcohol. So if you want something a bit lighter, I recommend cola. Really recommend cola. So make yourself a Live Libre with that. Absolutely beautiful. Then we get into the liqueur zone, and this has become something of an obsession at the distillery. We love our liqueurs. These are the first liqueurs we've done. First one we released was the honey and lavender liqueur. So this is bottled at 32%, which is quite high for a liqueur. Most liqueurs in the 20s, but I think that 32% enables it to hold a lot more flavor, particularly to do with the honey. You will notice it's there's a bit of sediment, so that will show you that we do use real honey. There's no artificial honey flavoring. It's just honey and lavender. Honey sourced from Dumfriesshire, so it's Scottish honey, and lavender sourced locally from West Lothian. So it's basically 100% Scottish ingredients, aside from the molasses, of course, that made the rum. So that is that. Really, really beautiful. I would drink that neat, completely drink it neat after dinner. It's quite sweet. It's quite, it's still got, obviously the lavender brings some top notes to it, and that really comes through in the finish. So I would drink that neat, 100% neat. After dinner, it's quite sweet, but it's not one of these that's sickly sweet. It leaves you with a bit of tannins on your palate. It's got a good structure because of the tannins, but it also has the floral note that you get from the lavender. So it does. It's a nice balance of ingredients, I think. So across your palate, really gives you good experience. Excuse me for a second. Okay, right. So where was I? So next one we released. It's the latest one. It's literally probably about 3 weeks old. Is the rum with raspberry and hibiscus. So this is similar to the previous one. This is simply being steeped with raspberries, Scottish raspberries, and hibiscus, sourced, dried hibiscus, sourced locally from Edinburgh. I don't know where it's grown, but you can source all of these botanicals obviously from the stores that supply gin botanicals. So very, very interesting take. The first time I tried a drink called Sorrel, which is a very Caribbean or Jamaican thing, I absolutely loved it. That stuck in my memory, and I couldn't forget it. So the opportunity to use that in a drink was just too much, and too much to resist. So I think it works beautifully. I think the raspberry is really obviously jammy. So you're talking about a raspberry jam flavors. Literally, it just tastes like raspberry jam. That's largely because we macerate it at a high temperature. So the tank that you saw over there is temperature controlled, so we can raise or lower the temperature. So we macerate at a high temperature. So that creates, again, some cooking effects in the raspberries, and you get that kind of jammy kind of flavor in it. But then the hibiscus also brings some dryness and some top notes. It's got some floral stuff happening. So it's about balancing the bottom notes and the top notes. That's the way we approach making of our liqueur. So you'll always be sort of bottom notes and top notes. So something bringing the bottom end and the top end to give you a bit of balance. So yeah, really absolutely lovely. This is magic on its own. I would say before dinner, or before dinner as an aperitif. It is sweet, but it's not super sweet. It's quite it's got a bit of a bitter finish. So it could work as an aperitif, I think. So that's that. That's our live range. Just gonna get myself a drink. So a little bit of rum, slice of lime, and some albacola. Very good stuff. Okay. Cheers, everybody. Cheers.